Okay, so whenever you're ready, Angela.
First off and foremost, congratulations to all those races. You are a wonderful inspiration to me. Next year, I'm going to be in special Olympics track and field.
Amazing.
And I need someone as an inspiration, and you're number one on my list.
Oh, thanks, Angela.
But I just want to say congratulations. I don't know how you've completed all those races. But my first question is, what made you want to do these races? Like, at like 2 years old, did your mom make you race or do something, or what made you want to do these things?
I do not have one person in my family, my close family, that's athletic, which is interesting, isn't it? And I don't know if my parents would like me to say that, but no one, my mum, my dad, my sister aren't particularly athletic, but what they do have is they're incredibly stubborn. They're very motivated in whatever they do. So my mum's just a workhorse. She's a nurse. And when she was raising us, she would do night shifts and she would come home at 7 in the morning, and then she would take us to school and she would have a few hours sleep in the day and then pick us up. So I just come from a background of really hard workers, and I don't think it matters if you come from a physical background. I think whatever your goal is, if you're brought up with that type of spirit and determination, that feeds you.
My other question is, with the training involved in this, before you even get trained to run, do you have to have a trainer at a gym to work out? I mean, how many hours a day do you work out? Do you do certain things like lift weights for 10 minutes and then go to a treadmill? And what is your training day?
So my training for my races last year was very ad hoc. I had no structure, no discipline, no consistency, pretty much because I was going from one race, getting home, trying to recover the body and getting to the next race. And I was also studying as a law student. And I think, last year was all about having the mental discipline to be able to go through the races. And as I said in my talk just then, 2011 was about bringing my physical capabilities more in line with that mental determination. So I am trained by a coach. In fact, I've got a team of people from a company called Bodyology Performance, and they train me. Very, very structured, disciplined, pretty high intensity levels. I do intervals, which is completely different for me. As someone who likes to do ultra events, sometimes you think that you just train for long periods, not high intensity, but now I do, speed work, track work, hills, I bike, I swim, variety, but it's much more structured.
In those races that you have been competing in, have you ever made any friends? Have they supported you? Have you supported them? And when they're not doing a very good job, like maybe they're throwing up and they're wanting to quit, do you give them inspiration? So there's three questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, ultra events, it's so different than a road event, like road marathons. The camaraderie is one of the most enticing components of these races. And I used to think that I was very competitive, and I still think I am to an extent, but if I had been running with someone on a marathon distance in an ultra event, and all of a sudden in the last few kilometres they are really struggling, I will stop and I will help them, but as they would as well. I'm not trying to make myself seem like someone inspirational or anything, but anyone would do that in that kind of context. That's what's the different things about ultra runners, is you do very quickly develop relationships and care for people. And maybe it's different if you're in the top 1% of the field, but if someone's struggling and they're near you, of course you'd help them, because I think that experience you remember far into the future than coming third in your age category, but you remember the friendship you formed with that person, and that can be long lasting.
How many coaches do you have when they train you? Do you have the same coach for 20 years, or is it every couple months you have a different trainer?
No, I'm trained by the guys from Bodyology. So I work particularly with one guy called Ben. He writes my programs and he tells me I have to give him my training loads, and he's the kind of one day to day making sure I'm doing the right thing. And then there's two other people who are directors in that company, and one's more of a specialist on the altitude training, which was very, very important for going into the Himalayas. and one guy is more into like the body composition of the body. So when I come back from a race and I feel okay, but we want to make sure that before I step up my training or do another race, I'll do this thing called a bod pod test. And it's like I'm sitting in an egg and they trying to work out what my body fat's like, my lean muscle mass, because obviously it's fine for your fat mass to go down, but you don't want your lean muscle mass to drop, because that's what looks after you. So I work with the three of them.
Okay, and another question is, when you are doing these races and you get a break for like say 10 minutes or whatever, do you ever have a journal with you where you journal your thoughts and your feelings or what you want to do in the future? Like when you see a beautiful tree or something, do you sit down and write for a few minutes, or is it just go, go, go? You don't have time for that.
During the races, during the stage of the race, I wouldn't stop down. I might, I like to think that I would look up and look at the beautiful tree, but on these multi-stage events, I actually write a blog each night. And so whilst I'm racing in Nepal in November, it goes for 5 days, and after each night, I will sit down on these little computers in the middle of Nepal and I'll be writing down my thoughts. And people from back here and at home can look at them and they can actually send me comments. And I get them the next day. So it's really interactive that way. And I write a blog as well on my website. So I might not at the time, but the memories stay with you for longer than just that moment. So plenty of time to reflect later.
And with your first race, you were, of course all your races, but you were saying something how you have to provide your own water, your everything, and carry it on your back. How did you strategize? Like, how did you come up with maybe 8 bottles of water for a day? Or
so like, we pick up water every checkpoint, so that's about every 7 miles. So you only ever carry a maximum of 2 litres, 3 litres of water at a time. But what you do have to carry the whole time is all your food for the 5 or 6 days, all your clothes, but you don't really change your clothes very much, so you're wearing the same things. Your medical kit as well. So what you're trying to find is and your sleeping bag. So you're trying to find those gear items in the lightest weight possible. And so for food, you're looking for highly calorie dense food that's really light. So you might have noodles, I've got all my protein supplements as well, my Juice Plus, and everything goes into like these little snap lock bags, and they're really organised. Because one of the things is you actually can't always think about what's the type of thing that you need to eat right now. So I have everything in a like slightly bigger Ziploc bag that says day 1, and day 2, day 3. So I don't have to think, I just put my hand into day 1, grab out what I need to grab, and go ahead. You need to prepare yourself for the fact that your mind might not be really thinking clearly.
On your last race, when you get towards the finish line, what was like your thought? Like, oh my gosh, I finally got it done, or is it like you turn around and you see still more people and you feel bad for heading towards the front? Like, what is your last thoughts when you get right to the finish line?
My final race that I just did was in India, in the Himalayas. The checkpoint, I thought the finish line was going to be closer than what it was. So before that point, I just had a moment of, it's quite satisfaction that you were able to accomplish something that you, such a big goal, and that was a huge race for me, and it was the most nervous I've been about completing something before. The distance was very unknown to me. The terrain was incredibly challenging. The temperature was dramatically changing, from hour to hour. So completing that race, I was very relieved that my team and I completed it safely, and then we made it in the cut-off time. I mean, I didn't have any goal time for that besides just make it in the 60 hours and for my whole crew to not be sick.
Oh, that's just wonderful. And so you have support, like a car behind you all the way, just in case anything happens?
In that race I did. Not in the races I did last year, but in this year when I did the Himalayan race in La Ultra, the High, I had 2 support vehicles, and I had 4 friends who came out, 3 from Australia and 1 from the United States, and they were my support crew. So I had 2 of the guys on push bikes, coming down the mountain with me, 1 going up the mountain with me. Then we had some local crew members from India as well. So it seemed like a solo event, but I couldn't have done it without all of their support. And literally, in the last few hours of the race, when I was getting incredibly fatigued and the altitude was really affecting me, I was holding someone's hand pretty much the whole time. So, you know, you can't take the credit of completing that race as a soloist. Yeah.
Well, those were all really